Hi, I'm SB sir. Just a quick view of the book pictures so that you can understand this book pictures. I have explained it to you in the earlier portion of this class that these are the ribs. The ribs go along and join the sternum, and these are the floating ribs. These are the floating. The lower ribs are the floating ribs. See, this is actually floating. It has not joined to some bones here. So these are the floating ribs, and the diaphragm from inside it is seen that it's a dome-shaped structure, and it actually goes inside this ribs. The volume of the ribs, it goes inside the volume of the ribs. So these are the external intercostal muscles. These are the contraction of these external intercostal muscles. See, the arrows are given upward. The contraction of the external intercostal muscles. They pull up the lower ribs from the upper ribs are actually placed. The upper ribs are placed upper, so the upper to the lower ribs. In comparison to the upper rib, the upper ribs are always placed outside the body, and they always, when these lower ribs are contracting, the lower ribs are moving, they are going outside the body, so that the volume of the chest cavity is increasing. So elevation, the word is elevation of the ribs causes sternum to move upward. So all these ribs elevate. If all these ribs goes up, the lower ribs getting towards the upper rib, the next higher level outside. So this elevation of these ribs causes the sternum to move outward, which increases the front to back. This is the front to back volume. The front to back volume is expanding. The lung is expanding of the thoracic cavity. The front to back volume dimension of the thoracic cavity is increased by this contraction of these external intercostal muscles. So this one, the contraction of the diaphragm, when the diaphragm contracts, it actually goes down. The contraction of the diaphragm leads to lowering of the diaphragm, and contraction increases the vertical dimension of the thoracic cavity. The vertical dimension of the thoracic cavity, the lowering of the diaphragm, the contraction of the diaphragm, the lowering of the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm. The lowering of the diaphragm leads to the increase in the vertical dimension, and this increases the front to back dimension. The contraction of these external intercostal muscles cause elevation of the ribs, which increases the side-to-side dimension of the thoracic cavity. So there is not in this picture. There is an increase in the lateral dimensions also. The lateral dimensions, while the lower ribs, while the muscles, the external intercostal muscles, pull up the lower ribs. The lower ribs are like floating. They are like handles, like pump handles. So if I draw like this, say two types of ribs here, the ribs which are joined, if it is joined, this joining is here in the vertebral column, and here in the frontal portion it is joined to the sternum. So this is a bucket. It's a bucket. It resembles a bucket. So if I draw a bucket here, and the bucket handle is joined at both ends, so these ribs are like bucket handles, and if the bucket handle moves, so it moves, it is joined here, so the bucket handle can move like this. So these ribs also, like bucket handles, can move like this. So bucket handle movement, the ribs which are joined, the upper ribs which are joined in the front to the sternum, moves like bucket handles, and while they move up, so they increase this dimension. But the lower ribs which are attached like this here, they are like pump handles. They are floating here. They are not joined to the frontal portion, so they are like pump handles. These ribs are like pump handles. Why they are called pump handles? Because they are not joined in the frontal side of the body. And these ribs, when this pump handle moves, they increase. If this is the thoracic cavity, if this is the thoracic cavity, so because of this movement of these ribs, the pump handles, all these pump handles in the lower ribs, they join. If they move upward, so the thoracic cavity is, the lateral dimension of the thoracic cavity is increased. they move outward and upward, outward and upward. So the movement of these handles, increases. The movement of these handles increases the lateral dimension of our body. So this is our body, this is our thorax, these are the hands, these are our hands. So terrible drawing. So this is our hand, our neck. So this lateral, this is the thorax, and so the lateral portions of our thorax are getting increased by this pump handle movement. So the bucket handle movement as well as the pump handle movement of the ribs, they actually help to increase the volume of the thoracic cage. So I'll go on to this next picture. This was all about inspiration, how this thoracic cage volume has increased. The thoracic cage volume has increased and the air is sucked in. And this is about expiration, though there are two processes. And the inspiration, during inspiration, what happens is that in both cases, during forced inspiration as well as during normal inspiration, during a normal quiet breathing where there is no sounds of breathing, you always find all these muscles are acting while there is a quiet breathing as well as while there is a forced breathing. But for expiration, this when there is a quiet expiration going on, when you are expiring air, forceful breathing endeavor. So during a quiet expiration, there is a different thing. When there is an active respiration, there is a different thing. So for expiration, you have to follow these two diagrams. So this is the passive expiration where just the diaphragm goes down and all the muscles of external intercostal muscles, the external intercostal muscles that has pulled those ribs, just relaxes. There is no involvement of energy, no muscular contraction. The muscles that inspired just relaxes and the ribs goes down. The diaphragm that contracted and got flattened just relaxes and the diaphragm goes up. So this is passive expiration. While in active respiration, you find that the internal intercostal muscles come into play and they contract forcefully to lower the ribs, to actually change the position of the ribs very fast. And these muscles, internal intercostal muscles, get involved in active respiration. And the abdominal muscles, they also contract them forcefully and forces the belly to go inside. They abduct. We just while we expire actively, very sharply we expire. We put out air with a blow. We blow out air. So these abdominal muscles forcefully pushes up all the diaphragm contents. The diaphragm goes like a big dome. The volume gets contracted. So the muscles of the abdominal muscles contract. The abs contract. Actually, the diaphragm muscles, they also contract forcefully. So these processes, contraction of intercostal muscles, contraction of the abdominal muscles, and the muscles of the diaphragm, all these muscles contract very heavily to produce a very sharp pressure rise inside this thoracic cavity, and that is a result that we actively blow out air. We forcefully blow out air. So I'll just read this part of this thing. The return of the diagram, ribs and the sternum to resting position on relaxation of the inspiratory muscles restores thoracic cavity to pre-inspiratory stage. The pre-inspiratory size is restored by relaxation of the inspiratory muscles, and all these inspiratory muscles, relaxation of these inspiratory muscles restores the thoracic cavity to its pre-inspiratory stage, restores the thoracic cavity, and then again an inspiratory cycle begins. There is a contraction of these external intercostals and another respiratory cycle begins. So here they have written, because it's an active respiration. This is the diagram. This is the illustration is from This illustration is from Sherwood, and this is the contraction of the abdominal muscles causes the diaphragm to be pushed upward, further reducing the vertical dimension of the thoracic cavity. And the position of the relaxed abdominal muscles, it's outward the belly, and the abdominal muscles contract to push the belly inside the body, and this pushing of the belly inside the body compresses on the abdominal contents, on the abdominal organs, and these organs now push up the diaphragm to above, and this abdominal muscle contraction, and the diaphragm assumes that dome shape, and so the volume is decreased. So I'll stop here, and I think I have taught you all the details of the respiratory cycle. It moves in, why the air moves out. It's all just a very short thing, very short revision. The air moves out because there is a buildup of pressure, and there is a contraction of the volume. The volume is compressed, and the air moves out. Of our lung, and why the air moves in. It's a negative pressure breathing. It's a negative pressure that we create. It's a suction pressure that we create inside the lung, and so the air comes in. So this is all about our pressures.